Good evening. Thank you all for coming. It's been several months since we've had an event here, and it's really nice to have all of you all here again. It feels nostalgic, it feels beautiful, um, and we didn't know whether people will show up, and with traffic, the rain, so we're just really thank you for coming. I know you can do so many things on a Friday evening, so it's really nice to have you all here. Special thanks to Mrs. Dalvi and Mr. Dalvi is in the restroom for coming from Panvel. We invited them, and this event happened because of Yogesh. Yogesh, long-time friend, colleague, studied under them at Pillai's College of Architecture, and so we've been following their work for a long time, and we've been wanting to invite them. And so Mrs. Dalvi is here to speak on her work, her research, and I'll just briefly introduce her. This lecture presentation traces several themes in the evolution of Indian architecture in the post-independence period. It attempts to unravel the concerns and challenges that shape the attitudes of Indian architects as they participated in creating the building culture for the newly formed nation state in the 50s and 60s. The presentation goes on to map the narratives of Indian architecture as it unfolds in the following decades and brings the discussion to the present, where it also speculates about its future trajectory. Mrs. Smita Dalvi teaches architecture and aesthetics in Navi Mumbai and Bombay. She is professor at MES Pillai College of Architecture, Panvel, and the editor of Tecton, a scholarly journal of architecture published biannually. Tecton is a really nice little journal. It's not much bigger than this book, but it's one of the few serious publications on architecture, extremely well curated, always interesting to read.
It's completely online now. All issues are available online for everyone to read. So please do check it out.
Yeah, Tekton, Tecton. She is currently the chairperson of the Board of Studies in Architecture at Mumbai University. She holds a PhD in design from IIT-Bombay. Her research areas are architecture as social history, urban heritage, and film studies. Her area of special interest is Indo-Islamic Art and Aesthetics. She has delivered several short courses and guest lectures on this subject in India and abroad. Ms. Dalvi is the co-author of Panvel, Great City, Fading Heritage, published in 2020, and the editor of Celebrating India in 75 Buildings, 2023. This recent publication commemorates 75 years of India's independence through a selection of 75 significant buildings from 1947 to 2022. Both these books are available downstairs at a special price. So, thank you, ma'am, for coming.
Good evening, all of you, my new and dear friends from Pune. Welcome to this lecture, and let us transport ourselves to the Constituent Assembly session on the eve of 15th August 1947, where these words were spoken. Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny. Now the time has come when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. These are the words from Pandit Nehru's speech delivered in English and Hindi both in the Constituent Assembly on the eve of independence, considered as one of the greatest speeches of the 20th century. So, independence was indeed a momentous event for India, which he again describes as the ancient, the eternal, and the ever new. And it was stepping into becoming a modern democratic republic. So, what's the story of post-independence Indian architecture? We are kind of gathered over here to recount this particular story. But let's see what was the scenario before that. So, if we see that the architecture of the British Raj then mainly in the three presidency towns of Bombay, Calcutta and Madras, what we see, what Raj was doing was heavily into the revivalist styles, namely neoclassical, neo-Gothic and Indo-Saracenic. Essentially, the British Raj did not sponsor any modernist buildings at all as the project of the empire. However, side by side, several homegrown Indian practices, graduates of Sir J.J. School of Architecture, who were inspired by winds of change from the West and who had set up their practices, mainly working from Bombay, had already began to build using modern industrial materials, Art Deco buildings for instance in Bombay, and they were making residential and commercial buildings like this all over major cities in undivided India. And essentially you can say that that this way basically reflected changing ways of living and working in Indian cities, and we are talking about 1930s and 40s. Also, quite a few foreign architects had also set up shops, mainly operating from Bombay in partnership or otherwise, and they were doing similar things. Quite a few foreign architects were also invited by people to build for them, and to me one very beautiful example of that is this Golconda dormitory for Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry by Antonin Raymond and George Nakashima. And in fact, in one of my essay on the building, I describe this as India's first modern building. Now this all happened before independence, right? So modernity is always modernity in arts and or architecture is always going to be a reflection of certain social and political change or kind of shift towards modernity. So what was happening in India? That there was in 19th century, early 20th century, there was a tremendous social and political churning in the country, and we can say that several factors kind of came together around that time that ushers in a traditional society into or stepping into the modernity. Spread of education brought in awareness about their present conditions, a kind of critical reflection on tradition, and the social reformist movements and the freedom struggle kind of were also working hand in hand towards this kind of social and political change, because we must not forget that the freedom struggle was not just was not just a political movement. It was also rested in the social change, right? So this is the background under which you have kind of modern ideas coming into picture, and some of the stalwarts of those movements were from your city itself. But also when we are talking about modernity, one important factor was also infusion of modern technological inventions during the British Raj. So from mid 19th century onwards or early 20th century, several technological innovations that happened in the West kind of came to India, particularly in a city like Bombay. For example, if we see say railways, right? Now when the British kind of laid the railway network essentially to transport raw material to the port cities to be kind of taken back home, and also to transport military for a better control over the Raj. But unintended consequence was also that the railway network connected towns and villages and then the cities, and people travelled, and we have seen how the Mahatma kind of made a great use of it in traversing the whole country and kind of doing that. So similarly, so we have these things happening, and in terms of building and architecture, if we have to see what kind of technology was infused, then right from late 19th century we see use of iron and steel in buildings that was introduced, right. So the question is, what changed after independence, right? How is this kind of becoming some sort of a landmark in the story of architecture? But let us see, what did independence mean for other artistic fields? So in creative spheres such as arts, literature, theatre, we distinctly see winds of progress were greatly fueled by optimism after independence. So the Bombay Progressives, the IPTA Theatre Association, and the Progressive Writers Association, all these people kind of firmly rebelled against the traditional way of carrying out their craft, and kind of were looking for a very staunch modernist expression. And in fact, it is said that these movements defied all traditions viciously, cultural, moral, literary, linguistic. It was a declaration of war by the youth of the middle class against the prevailing social, political and religious institutions. Even something like in theatre, the modern theatre immediately took shape with IPTA and with people like Ibrahim Al-Qazi, right. So definitely independence kind of gave an impetus to modernity in other artistic fields. What about architecture? What changed in architecture? Now if you see in Bombay, at least nothing much, because the architects continued to build as before. The Bombay architects were building prolifically, they continued to build, yeah, in the same way. So here in this picture, this is the picture of Liberty Cinema in Bombay, and that's an archival picture on the day that the cinema opened in 1949. The name itself is a tribute to independence, so Liberty Cinema. All right, and it's a beautiful Art Deco building. But I want to draw your attention to the poster, which is the film with which it is opening, the Andaz. Yeah, you can see that on the marquee. Now this film of 1949 also deals with a modern lifestyle in a traditional society. So cinema of late 40s and of 50s was also dealing with this whole idea of modernity itself, right. So yes. But of course many things changed, right. Soon many things changed. What changed after independence is that several new administrative, academic, scientific and cultural institutes that were now being envisioned and being established needed buildings to house them, and this is particularly true of Delhi, but also of several other state capitals also. And this resulted in a burst of public architecture promoted by the state, and a great opportunity for the architecture profession to shape a new language for the republic, new architecture for new India, so to speak. And the first 1.5 to 2 decades after independence were very productive for this new Indian architecture, mainly because of this wholesale patronage of state for public projects, both at the center and at the state government level, as I said. And in these first 2 decades, we observe multiple impulses operating simultaneously. One of them was to conform to the language of Lutyens New Delhi, championed by the CPWD architects in Delhi. The other impulse was to seek inspiration in the forms of India's rich cultural past. And the third one was directly inspired by Nehruvian optimism in modernity and was to seek a modernist expression. And as I said, all three were seen to be operating simultaneously. So, this being the case, and what I am going to do from now on, instead of narrating a chronological story of post-independence Indian architecture, my approach is going to be thematic. So, what we will do is we will discuss the evolving themes and trends or concepts or ideas visible in the Indian story, all right. And I will start with these first three trends or themes and follow it up by 9 more such ideas, okay, and what I call as evolving trends in post-independence Indian architecture. So, let us look at them one by one as quickly as possible. So, the first one, the CPWD architects kind of trying to continue the Lutyens New Delhi language, and a very good example of that is the Supreme Court building, and juxtaposed with the vice-regal lodge that became the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Together you can see that how the neoclassical portico and a kind of a combination of classical and Buddhist dome and Mughal chhatri. So, that kind of a language, including the color and the material palette, is trying to be continued in this language. So, there were architects like Devlalikar and many others working in CPWD who built several bhavans, for administration and things like that. The second one was what is this one, and what we see here are highly modern functions such as a convention center or a 5-star hotel built with modern materials and modern technology, were styled with elements invoking past traditions such as Chaitya window, Buland Darwaza, Islamic jalis and jarokhas, etc. Right. So, this was kind of seen, and the Vidhan Sauda in Bangalore is the grandest example of this particular impulse of kind of being inspired from elements of India's past. The most dominant impulse, however, was to chart a rational modernist expression using modern technologies and rejecting historicism or applied ornamentations. The architects who followed this particular trend were inspired by the winds of international style, and they were truly the pioneers of Indian modernism. They embraced a belief in architecture of deep social commitment. So, they truly kind of believed that with this new way of thinking about building, that they can actually usher in a new kind of society. So, with that belief, they participated in this endeavor, and they were aided by the state as well as quite a few private entities, both providing patronage as well as an unfettered faith in the new way of building. Now, some of these pioneers are Perin Mistry, Habib Rahman, Achyut Kanvinde, Durgadas Bajpai, and then kind of also entry of Corbusier into the soup, right. Let us look at them one by one. So, Perin Mistry was the first woman ever to qualify as an architect in Asia. She graduated from Sir J.J. School in 1936, went to London for her RIBA, worked there for few years, came back and joined her father J.P. Mistry, who was a big architect in Bombay, and it was a partnership firm, and she joined the family firm as a partner. for the longest time we did not know about her. A lot of research now is happening about her specific contribution in the firm, because she worked there for long years. She had a long kind of an innings in the firm. Just to quote one of the researcher, what she says about her is that her style was rather distinct from that of her father's. It was more simple and cleaner lines and less ornate. Yeah. So if we all know what are the attributes of modernism in architecture, right? So this is what is being described over here. It personified her no nonsense, no frills thinking about going about the buildings, right? And this is one of the JJ archival photo, group photo of a graduating batch, the only woman in her class, right? But in fact, she's one of the first modern Indian architect, actually. Post independence, we have Habib Rahman, who was sent to MIT on government scholarship, apprenticed under Walter Gropius, comes back and becomes an architect in PWD Bengal, and as architect of PWD Bengal, he builds this new secretariat for Calcutta, but before that he built this Gandhi Ghat as the memorial for Mahatma Gandhi on the banks of Hooghly. Jawaharlal Nehru was invited to inaugurate it. He saw it, he asked who is the architect of this, kind of kept him in mind, and then after a few years kind of got him to Delhi as architect in CPWD, which he went on to head and had a long innings as the chief architect of CPWD in Delhi and built remarkable buildings in Delhi. This is, we can call this India's first skyscraper, the first tall building with, so this is out and out Bauhaus aesthetics and first tall steel frame structure, right? And I want to juxtapose these two buildings. They both both state buildings, right? Assembly building and secretariat building, built around the same time, and we can see how two very different impulses are operating simultaneously in the country. So this is a diversity that we see, right? Further analysis of this I leave to you. Achyut Kanvinde, yeah, equally a great figure when we are talking about the pioneers of Indian modernism. Again had an extremely long and prolific career, remained a staunch modernist throughout his career, and he also he studied at JJ and then again went on a government scholarship to Harvard. He also trained under Walter Gropius, and his early buildings at Atira and Indian Council for Cultural Relations in Delhi, we can very clearly see the Walter Gropius influence, right. Durga Das Vajpayee also trained at MIT, comes back and builds this building, the one above in partnership with Pilo Modi, and this one also I think in partnership with Vanu Bhuta, I am not very sure, but Jahangir Art Gallery in Bombay and Oberoi Hotel in Delhi. And this rationalist attitude and modernist impulse kind of continues from 50s to 60s onwards, and in the very same architects we can see a certain shift also, because their modernism now also gets tempered by local conditions. So kind of how to cut down the harsh sun, for example, right. So here are the examples of the continuing evolution of architects like Habib Rahman and Achyut Kanvinde. So we can see how that is progressing. And this one, so this strong modernist aesthetics of buildings kind of contributes greatly to to commercial architecture as well in large metro cities, in the newer urban areas. And here the great examples are Shiv Sagar Estate in Bombay by I.M. Kadri, several commercial buildings by S.L. Chitle in Chennai, and Hasmukh Patel Dena Bank. So, very very strong modernist aesthetics that came to define the Indian commercial architecture in the metropolitan cities at that time, right. And in the 50s, we also then have arrival of Corbusier to India, and his Chandigarh project, all right. And we know about we know about these main buildings that he conceives and builds in the Capitol complex. But there were other buildings also that he designed in India, specifically in Chandigarh and in Ahmedabad. And what we kind of see in these is an aesthetic of béton brut or brutalism, and that of brise soleil or sunbreakers. So, truth to materials which is achieved by their raw expression, right. So, that is how we can define béton brut. And here it is achieved by Corbusier by use of bare concrete and exposed bricks. What is actually interesting for us to see is that what was the impact of Corbusier coming and doing the Chandigarh project and all these other buildings, what was the impact on architecture that followed. And that we can kind of see in two ways. One is that certain young architects and engineers who directly worked under him for Chandigarh project, like people like Aditya Prakash, B.P. Mathur, Urmila Chaudhary, etc., or other young architects at that time who were inspired by the Corbusier's ideas and methods, and kind of followed it up in their own way, in their own works. So, there is a whole lot of architects, these and many others, right. And let us look at some of their works. So, that is Aditya Prakash's Neelam Theatre in Chandigarh, B.P. Mathur along with Corbusier's cousin Pierre Jeanneret, Gandhi Bhavan in the Punjab University campus in Chandigarh. But of course, other buildings in Punjab University are also kind of actually worth looking at if you are interested later. And Urmila Chaudhary, who went on to work with the Chandigarh government as an architect, was also the chief architect for quite and built quite a lot of buildings, and her even research is also taking place in her works and all that, because so far the stories of women were kind of were just not kind of being told, but now it's being told, and some of them were pretty prolific actually. And then the other set of people who were inspired, so people like Shivdat Sharma, J.K. Chaudhary, his IIT Delhi complex, and few other campuses also that he designed are obviously, you can see that they are inspired by the methods of Corbusier. Shivnath Prasad is a great case study for that, and early works of B.V. Doshi. Like if you see the Institute of Indology, I mean, if somebody told you that was Corbusier's building, and if you didn't know, you would believe them. Now, so what we see is that as an impact of Corbusier architecture is this is Indian brutalism, you can say, because brutalism now if you compare that with brutalism in the Soviet bloc countries, for example, then this actually kind of stands apart, all right, and we see a much more expressive use of concrete as a plastic material, right, and the standout figure in that is of course Shivnath Prasad. but many buildings in Delhi you would find with this example Kuldeep Singh's NCDC or Charles Correa's Portuguese church itself, right? And these were also the you can see here that there is also a collaboration between the architect and the engineer, not to miss that point. And this impulse of using materials in their bare form, yeah, that is essentially brutalism. Kind of it continues. It continues today in the works of people like Gurjit Singh Matharu, for example. So if we therefore kind of are talking about 60s and 70s, so these were the decades of great adventure where architects freely experimented with the potential of concrete technology, in which, in the words of Raj Rewal, nothing was impossible. That was the level of optimism that they had, that we can do anything that we kind of set out to do that. And the Shri Ram Center that we saw earlier and the Hall of Nations over here, they exemplify this whole attitude of optimism, which was, as I said, was also born out of very productive collaboration between architect and the structural engineer. The next impulse I want to talk about is a search for an Indian modernism. So all this while, inspired by their exposure to international modernism, Indian architects were also cognizant of local conditions and regional building cultures, and being aware of this and kind of being sensitive about this brought a certain nuance to their modernism. Some scholars also use the term tropical modernism to describe something like this, and we see this in many other countries which we know as global south countries or the third world countries or whatever, where modernism of a different kind, of a more local kind was being practiced. All right, so we have different modernisms over here, and many of these works, and particularly Doshi's school, and you can see here from that Institute of Indology to the Sept school what kind of shift is taking place, etc. The new generation, Correa, Doshi, Reva, all these people who are coming, and this quest is kind of all the time guiding them, and we see the creation of sensitive, rooted, and yet very contemporary buildings in their work. But by the time we come to early 1980s, we witness a more pronounced churning of ideas and questioning of the modes of architecture dictated by the ideals of modernism, as was happening in other parts of the world as well, in late 70s and early 80s. So this questioning the very dogmatic ideas of modernism was taking place elsewhere, and was taking place here as well. All right. Now, in that scenario, two events in 1980s shaped the discourse of architecture that followed. The first one was the Vistara exhibition in 1986. That was a part of a Festival of India exhibition that travelled in major parts of the world, all over the world. It was not just about architecture, it was about many artistic achievements of India, and that travelled all around the world. It was part of the Festival of India exhibition, as I said, and finally it came to Bombay, the architecture exhibition, where it was held for a couple of months at Worli's Nehru Center. People of my vintage would remember, we were in college at that time and volunteered as students in this exhibition. The second event of the 1980s was the International Conference on Mud Architecture in 1987 in Trivandrum. So that brings us to this particular impact of Vistara. exhibition. So, the Vistara exhibition in 1986 that unearthed and popularized esoteric ideas from Indian mythology resulted in rekindling interest among architects in seeking forms from the past. So, what we saw earlier in 1950s, that many architects sought inspirations from the forms of India's rich past. Now that is kind of coming back, but in a much more kind of mystical way. We see a renewed interest in the historical and mythical forms, and many call this phrase as India's postmodernism. Now, rightly or wrongly, I leave it to you to judge. And if you see now in the works of Raj Rewal and Charles Correa, now you have already seen their previous works, right? And you see here a shift in their work. And Raj Rewal used to make presentations to us students, double projectors, and all this was not there, slide projectors. Many young people wouldn't even know what I am talking about. And there would be double projection, Fatehpur Sikri on one side and Asiad Village on the other side. So there is a direct kind of a link that he would try to establish, and Korea's Vidhan Bhavan in Bhopal. So these ideas are already kind of animating them, and that results into Vistara. And Charles Correa, who was a major figure of the Vistara exhibition and was responsible for kind of bringing in ideas like Manusha, Manthana and Mandala into the popular imagination, kind of follows up with this. So this Jawahar Kala Kendra is the is a most kind of concrete embodiment of all that he was talking about in Vistara, and then he does that. Okay, one result of this, and this exhibition, the catalog, it became like really popular. Everyone knew, and while we were students, this ideas like mandala and all people were talking about. All right, so the concepts such as Vastu, which just a previous generation from me, the students would never even have heard. Now everyone started talking about, and now in the hands of people like Rewal or Correa, these ideas at least got a kind of a playful, a nuanced kind of an expression. But later on in 90s, and when we are talking about aesthetic of globalism, you will see that how these ideas actually kind of end up in a in a completely different form. So it led to a lot of pastiche and unthinking, unmindful, uncritical historicism, mixing and matching without knowing. So yeah, so this is where it comes. The other major event that I told you about that also happened in the 80s was this international conference on mud architecture. Okay, and it collated the workings of alternative practices rooted in the local and free from the baggage of styles or ideologies. Laurie Baker was an important figure in this critical movement. His Center for Development Studies at Trivandrum was an important example and inspired a host of other experimentative projects that contemporize the vernacular methods and techniques of building. One of the offshoot of HUDCO holding this particular conference was also creation of network of building centers all over the country, and particularly in the South India, it had a great deal of impact in contemporizing the vernacular methods of construction, and architects greatly embraced them, particularly architects who graduated in late 80s and early 90s. These young architects embraced some of these ideas wholeheartedly, and it kind of popularized a trend that we know as alternative practices. Yeah. And as I told you, this CDS in Trivandrum by Laurie Baker was a beacon like example for all of them. And right, but also of course experiments at Auroville, we should not forget about that also played a huge role, and architects like Suhasini and Anupama and many others kind of very freely and delightfully experimented with these ideas, right. And so this kind of this became this was a small but an enduring trend in the Indian story that continues even today. Works like people like Chitra Vishwanath, Vinu Daniel, and a few of my friends who are sitting here as well, kind of would understand what I am saying that very clearly, right. A third discourse which also emerged in 1980s but became stronger in the following decades is the one that specifically focused on site and climatic conditions and seeking passive thermal solutions. So, I call that rationalism and sustainability. Buildings like Matighar by Sanjay Prakash and Torrent Research Center by Parul and Nimish Javeri are good examples of this. Several other projects also, and they displayed a remarkable environmental sensitivity and innovation much before green architecture became a fashionable word. And this trend kind of continued in the works of many architects, including architects like Ashok Lal, and a recent example in your own city by Case Design, Avasara Academy, where going ahead with rationalism and sustainability, looking at the site and the climatic condition and passive solutions. Now, this is an interesting trend, sculptural formalism, because a predilection for sculptural forms and symbolic meanings is always, it always has been present in Indian architectural tradition, and it continued to animate post-independence architects as well. Even if applied ornament was consciously avoided, these architects exploited, for example, plasticity of concrete to mold fluid and contemporary forms aided by modern construction technology. So, in that sense they remained firmly in the modernist tradition, but free from the compulsion of a white box of modernism. Another material freely exploited for this reason, for its contemporary sculptural quality, was bricks, and a good example of that is Satish Gujral's Belgian embassy. And we see this desire for formalism throughout the postmodern, post-independence Indian architecture, and it continues till today. So, even Habib Rahman's the very first building that he came to be known for, even though he was a chela of Walter Gropius, but his very first building kind of displays this cultural formalism and use of architectural symbolism to symbolize a social and religious harmony. Because remember, for whom this memorial is being built and in what context. Louis Kahn's IIM Ahmedabad exploits the quality of bricks, and recent Sai Mandir on the outskirts of Hyderabad by C Studio uses sculptural quality of bricks to achieve a contemporary expression of a Hindu temple, and yet maintaining a certain degree of familiarity with it. It's a beautiful and brilliant example of this kind of an impulse. Then we come to this very interesting phenomena, and from the mid 1990s onwards, the Indian story itself was taking a turn towards economic liberalization and the rising GDP growth. And what rising GDP growth means in terms of development and what it means for building industry, of which architects we are a part of that, right. So there was obviously a great deal of building activity, but accompanied by a withdrawal of state from the patronage and kind of there was very little initiation of public works, but the patronage now shifted, the pattern of patronage shifted to private entities, corporate entities, what we call builder lobby, or other corporate entities who were kind of making all these several buildings. So the pattern of patronage and therefore the production of aesthetics kind of changes in a very different way. Globalization and a market driven building industry now has its share in changing the nature of the profession itself, and we have like these two, Hafiz Contractor and CP Kukreja Architects are one of the few very large corporate architectural firms operating in India, and building all over the country, and in it kind of in the aesthetics for commerce. Now you see a kind of a global awareness, a kind of a desire to be equated with global, and we see a new kind of aesthetics kind of that emerges. All right. And this is the last theme that I want to speak about, the new millennium. Now we are in 2024, and whatever we talk about in new millennium, right, is something we are very close to it. So therefore, how do we even talk about it, or how do we make an analysis of it is the question. We obviously talk about it because we are a part of it. Many of you are actually a part of it, right? So with the economy booming and proliferation of architecture education, now that there is this huge tendency of just kind of dismissing architecture education and architecture college ki wo kuch wo karte nahi hai, wo sab aise. But please understand that the new breed of thinking architectural practices that we have here in this country is a product of this proliferation of architecture education, which was earlier just kind of in few centers in the country, and that has brought in a change, whether we acknowledge it or not. Okay, so as a teacher of architecture, I would never take it lying down कि तुम लोग कुछ नहीं करता है. Okay, so sorry for that rant over there, but yes. So how do we talk about it? Now I use some of these words to describe the attributes of some of these practices: pluralism, diversity, multidisciplinarity. All right. Now we talked about with the Vistara exhibition. There was another exhibition that was held in Bombay. Many of you might have visited that in 2016. This was called the State of Architecture exhibition, and this exhibition in fact kind of told the whole story in fact of post-independence Indian architecture. Okay, in some kind of a curatorial manner. What was really interesting part of that, or one of the interesting part of this exhibition, was this particular section called charting vectors, and it showcased projects done in last 20 years, that was before 2016, by architects under the age of 50. Okay, so this is significant. Under the age of 50 means that younger people are kind of entering, in a significant way, and kind of claiming a voice in the story of Indian architecture. And the above two are some examples from that exhibition that I picked up, and this one also kind of was going on, right? It's a campus, so several buildings kind of came in a phased manner, and this a very recent one again, kind of bringing a contemporary modern expression to a religious building typology, again by a very young practice in a small city in India. Okay, so this is where kind of we are existing, you know, in the present, or let's say just a few years before today's time of 2024. And yeah, so this is a summary. These are the 12 themes or impulses or trends or ideas that from time to time kind of from 50s onwards till now have, according to me, have animated the story of Indian architecture. And it's not to say that they were one after the other. That I think that's very clear. They were kind of operating simultaneously. They also were evolving within themselves, and kind of we can see that how each idea also evolved and continued in the immediate future with different architects like me, Musti, Khushru, and Yogesh. We were talking about Charles Correa, and we can see how if we kind of plot the trajectory of his works, we can see the changing ideas. So that whole Manusha, Manthana, Mandala thing, yeah, that animated him, but then he left behind, and then actually he says form follows climate, right? And in the last decade of his life, in fact, the best of his works got produced not in India but outside India, right? So yes, so that happens, right? And that is where now I also want to talk about this book, the idea of this particular book that is called Celebrating India in 75 Buildings. Okay, now this is actually a result of a very fun sort of an exercise in college. I teach in Pillai College of Architecture. My colleague Jinu Korean is also over here, and some of my past students who are working in Pune are right now over here. But so when we completed 70 years of our independence, on Facebook, several people were posting, their list, to honor the 70 years, right? That 70 favorite or 70 greatest Bollywood songs, or 70 greatest Hollywood films, or 70 greatest rock songs and whatnot, right? And I thought, why is no one talking about my 70 favorite buildings? And I said, and I was by that time in the new curriculum in Mumbai University, I was already teaching as a small component in the curriculum post-independence Indian architecture. So I myself was kind of discovering it, so to say, yeah, because we have to study in order to teach, right? And I thought, why not this? So we came up with an idea of celebrating India in 70 buildings, right? And Jinu Korean was there, Tejashi Lakras, my another colleague at that time, and few students also joined, and we made a long list. Of buildings, and then we made a short list, and we had an exhibition organized where one student made one panel on every building. That was kind of greatly liked by everyone. We said, where people said, "Acha, ye bhi hua hai kya? Pata nahi tha." All right, and then we knew what we had to do after 5 years, because that would be the actual major landmark in the story of India's independence, completing 75 years. So this this was brought out, and it was very generously brought out by the management of the school where I teach, Mahatma Education Society. So they brought it out, and they are kind of they say it's not for commercialization. We just collect some money towards the cost of printing of the book that itself, and it is basically made for students of architecture, but also for teachers of architecture. Some of the best teachers whom I kind of greatly admire for their knowledge, they bought this book, and even they said, "Acha Smita, I also did not know about 6 or 7 buildings of this." So I said, okay, like, the purpose has served, because even if you did not know, so fine, great. So that's how this books come. The lecture and the book is not the same. This is slightly different. There could be a question as which 75 buildings, how those 75 buildings, etc., etc. We can talk about that later if you are interested. But let's a postscript, so to say. Yeah. Right. I have 4 more minutes, so we can talk about a couple of more ideas, because this book is from 47 to 22, 75 years. Okay. But I want to talk about this idea also, the modernist heritage and conservation movement. So how do we view the legacy of last 75 years of post-independence architecture in India? Is it worthy of celebration? Is heritage only something that is very old? Is a question that we have to ask ourselves. Are the buildings contained in this book worthy of celebration? If they are worthy of celebration, do we consider them as heritage? Is modern architecture considered heritage? We have to ask this question in the context of our own country, because the world over this question is already answered. All right, world over, landmark projects of modernist era, and particularly of 1930s, 40s, 50s and 60s are now protected buildings. All right. In 2016, UNESCO accorded World Heritage status to Le Corbusier's main projects all over the world, and so therefore automatically the Chandigarh buildings became a part of that. All right. Now all this you might already know, okay, but something that I discovered just during the just a couple of months back, during my summer holidays, when I was just trying to look for because on Instagram you something pops up and say, oh, like, this is some new project being done by this Bangladeshi firm, and we know that in Bangladesh, and right now what's happening in Pakistan I don't know, but in 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, again, great modernist works, that we can call tropical modernism, was being done in Pakistan as well. So if we talk about the Indian subcontinent, so I was just trying to look at something at Bangladesh, and what I discovered that one of the pioneer of Bangladeshi modernism, and that precedes the creation of Bangladesh, of course, first as East Pakistan and then as Bangladesh, was Nazrul Islam. And they have already nominated architectural works of Nazrul Islam in Bangladesh are nominated for World Heritage status. If you go to UNESCO's website, that whole nomination you can see. Okay, if it is accepted, they will get the World Heritage status tag. Okay. What about B.V. Doshi's buildings in India? What about Charles Correa's buildings in India? What about Shivnath Prasad's buildings in India? Are we proceeding towards nominating them for World Heritage site tag? Right. So that's the kind of thing that we have to ask. All right. So we really have to wake up to this, because otherwise, if we don't recognize the values enshrined in our recent heritage, in our recent architectural past, what will happen is that in front of our own eyes, some very important episodes of our story of post-independence architecture are vanishing in front of our eyes, and we are not able to do anything to prevent tragedies like this. Okay, do we even feel a loss of it, is the question that we have to ask. And that brings me to this, that where are we headed? Okay, and yes, where are we headed? Now, if we see today, okay, and what is not included in this book, now we have, we are again seeing a return of state patronage in a major way, right? Both in Delhi as well as in the state capitals. So, a lot of public projects yes, are happening, whether for administrative functions or for other kind of projects, like for example the riverfront development projects. It's happening in your city also, and sitting in Bombay, we read a lot of reports about it. So I mean, I would like to know what are your views on it. Railway station revamp projects, a lot of private universities being set up and buildings for them. So, corporate patronage, state patronage has returned in a big way. And where are we headed? So, I am not yet completed. I think we will need, okay, yeah. Now, for me, if I have to kind of see where we should be headed, okay, then I would just show you two examples as a kind of just something like that. Okay, so so looking at our very present and in the kind of scenario that we have in our country, that it's a country of great opportunity, but also of great inequalities. Going into future, if we were to seek an optimist direction for Indian architecture, I would point as an example to practices such as this, which represents renewal, reuse, extensions, working with the existing and sensitively reusing, extending the life, rather than considering every project as a ground zero. This is what is required, right, in terms of strategy. And I was just talking with my young friend who is a part of the Loft studio and looking at the work, and this is exactly what I saw, right? This is what I mean. Okay, I'm not even talking about the social and the environmental concerns that are being displayed over here in a very unself-conscious manner. Okay, this is not for mere aesthetics. This is basically to respond in a very tactile and in a very material way to the environmental concerns and how these kind of social spaces, right? So I'm not even talking about this, that you all thinking people can obviously relate, but I'm kind of here talking about the direction in which the practices are working, and also not to miss the nature of the practice. So no longer when we say, okay, Charles Correa or Habib Rahman, where we paste one photograph. Now when we are talking about architectural practices, it's a group of people. It's a collaborative practices, non-hierarchical, multi-talented, diverse, increasing presence of women and youth from non-metro cities in India. Yeah, and that is bringing in this kind of cultural diversity into the practice, right? And this one more example, this Krishi Bhavan in Bhubaneswar, all right. So it's a state government department by Studio Lotus, and here what is the objective? Reimagining the relationship between the state and its people, and see how it could be done, right, using patterns, textures and colors evoking. So this is obviously, I'm sure all of you know about it. I regret that this project is not included in this book. So yes, there are mistakes, because things have happened, and again, a collaborative practice like this. So yes, so this, on this kind of note of optimism, that where I think we are headed, or we should be headed, I end my presentation. Thank you very much, all of you, for your patience hearing. And of course, this is not the end of the story, so there is no thank you slide as such. This story, I mean, we are right now over here, and a lot of my friends are here, a lot of people whom I admire, Girish Bhai, Parul Ben, yes, my friends who are here, whose works I know little more closely, and so that's what I would kind of hope for, the future episodes in Indian story, right? If one of you is going to make a book like this, celebrating India in 100 buildings, then think of how you would be going about it, right? So it's an assignment for all of you, okay?